Hi everyone, for today's video I wanted to talk about theme. Theme is extremely important because we're talking about it at the beginning of the class and we're going to continue to talk about theme until the very end of the class. So it's important that we all know what it is and we're working with the same definition as well. Sometimes people refer to theme for different things, and I want to make sure that when I'm asking for theme, you know what I'm asking for. So theme is the essential meaning of the story or the essential message of the story. So ask yourself, what is this story saying, or what does this story reveal? Okay, and it's a full statement, it's a full sentence. Okay, sometimes people think of theme as just one word, you know, the story's about love or the story's about faith or something like that. Those aren't themes. Okay, a theme is a full message, a full sentence about the story's message. Okay, there's also not just one for each story. So like, it's not something that you have to like unlock. That you're trying to figure out, okay, what's the theme? You know, I have to get this right. It's totally dependent on your reading of the story. Okay, so you can have dozens of different themes for any given work that we read. Okay, so it's not like this puzzle that you have to unlock. It just depends on what you want to talk about in terms of the story. All right, so let me give you some things to avoid doing when you're writing a theme. 1, avoid giving advice to the reader. So avoid the theme being advice to the reader. So don't tell the reader like, okay, this story reveals that you should do blah, blah, blah. Okay, the story is not usually trying to give advice. Avoid cliches. So avoid cliche sayings as your theme. Instead, come up with something original. And also, don't make your theme just true in the realm of the story. It should be universal, right? So your theme should be a revelation about the human experience, or you know, the way things work in the world or something like that, and not just about one character, okay, or just in the world of the story. Theme should be universal. Okay, so here's a trick for coming up with theme. Okay, come up with a number of things that you think the story might be about. Okay, so for example, let's use Raymond Carver's Cathedral. So come up with a list of things that you think the story is about, just words, right? So maybe you think the story is about labeling. Maybe you think it's about judgment. Maybe you think it's about blindness. Maybe you think it's about connection or human connection or something like that. So just come up with a long list. And then come up with a message that the story has about one of those concepts. So, for example, if you chose to say that the story was about human connection, then ask yourself, okay, what does the story say about human connection, right? What's the message that's about that concept, okay? And that's going to be your theme. So here's a little formula for you, okay? Raymond Carver's Cathedral is about blank and reveals that blank. So Raymond Carver's Cathedral is about human connection and reveals that recognizing the humanity in others is crucial to understanding oneself. All right, so that's the theme that I came up with. Recognizing the humanity in others is crucial to understanding oneself. So I think that can be supported by the story. It is a full message, right? It's a full statement. Maybe you said, I came up with another one too. Maybe it could be Raymond Carver's Cathedral is about human connection and reveals that labeling and judging prevents people from making connections with one another. Okay, so that could also be a message that is revealed in Raymond Carver's Cathedral. Okay. So, as we are coming up with our themes and providing support for our themes, we want to make sure that we're using evidence from the text, and that's it. Okay, evidence and analysis of the text itself. When we talk about theme, there is oftentimes, because it's universal. There's oftentimes the struggle of wanting to talk about the theme and its truth just in life. For example, if we're saying that a story is about marriage and reveals something about marriage, sometimes people struggle with wanting to say, more truths about marriage that they've learned just in life, and avoid that, right? We want to stick to supporting our theme using evidence from the text. We're not supporting that the theme is true in real life. We're trying to support that the story reveals that theme, okay? So what are some things that wouldn't work for Raymond Carver's Cathedral? So one thing that wouldn't work is if you label people, you'll never get to know them. That doesn't work because it is advice to the reader, right? It's not a revelation, but instead it's advice. It's like, if you do this, right? Same thing if we said, you should do this, right? That's not going to work because it's advice. Another thing that won't work for Raymond Carver's Cathedral, let's say that you think that the short story is about judgment, okay? So what won't work is the story is about judgment and reveals that only God can judge. Okay, that doesn't work because it's a cliche, and if we think about it, it really doesn't make much sense, isn't really relevant to this story. And that's the problem with a lot of cliches, that when we really get down to the essential meaning of the cliche, it isn't really supported by the story, or we have to work to make it work. Right? So cliches usually don't work, but even if they do, they're just unoriginal. So we want to avoid them. Same thing as like, be true to yourself or something. I think if we get down to it, the story doesn't support that. It doesn't make a lot of sense, and it's just really unoriginal. All right, so let's practice a little bit more using the short story, The Story of an Hour. All right, so you could say that short story is about independence, freedom, marriage, whole host of different things. So just the word marriage isn't going to work because that's only one word. Even if we put that in a phrase and we said a loveless marriage, that's still not the theme because it's just a short phrase. It's not a revelation or a message. But we could say, Kate Chopin's The Story of an Hour is about marriage and reveals that marriage can be oppressive, especially for women, right? And I think that works. It's a full statement. A lot of students go that route with it, with that theme. What wouldn't work? Story of an Hour reveals that Mrs. Mallard doesn't love her husband. So that doesn't work because it's not universal, okay? It's only about that one character. It only exists in the realm of the story. That might work as a character analysis, but it doesn't work as theme, okay? And also I don't even think it's true because I think that she does love her husband, right, if we're reading closely. Another thing that doesn't work. The story reveals that you should love people while they're here on earth. So that doesn't work because it's advice, okay? We're not shooting for advice to the reader, we're shooting for a revelation. Story of an Hour reveals that beauty is in the eye of the beholder. That's a cliche and one that has no relevance to the story at all, so that wouldn't work. Okay, hopefully you understand a little bit more about theme and what works and what doesn't work. And my last piece of advice to you is try to come up with a few ideas. Try not to go with the very first thing that you come up with, because a lot of times the first thing that we come up with is the most obvious thing, right? It's the most obvious message of the story. And when we are too obvious with our message, we find that we can support it just by summarizing the text, and we don't actually need to do analysis. Search for a theme that's a little bit deeper, that's a little bit less obvious, and you can do that by coming up with several options, okay? So I'm keeping this short. Hopefully this was helpful. As always, if you have any additional questions or you need clarification, just don't hesitate to ask.